Hey folks, it's Jim. I just wanted to share. Had an interesting conversation tonight by a young man who presented me with a thing, and he said, "Well, why learn to hunt and forage when there won't be any food left because there will be so many people fighting for the same stuff?" And then I did counterpoint to that, and maybe you might find this interesting, but I found it to be a great dialogue. It is my opinion that 75% to 90% will be gone within 6 months. And here are the reasons why. And I presented this to him. 50% will probably be gone in the first 60 days. In a cataclysmic event, I'm talking about where the rule of law is gone. Our government has crawled into their caves and their bunkers that they've prepared for, and so on and so forth, such as a cataclysmic EMP from the sun, which we just almost had one, by the way. It would have been on that level. Science agrees on that, and it just missed us. And we are overdue for one, by the way. Most physicists agree with that. Then we got all these plagues popping up all over the world, right? And I also have the feeling that, and just follow me on this, the permafrost is melting around the earth. So old man-extinguishing plagues and viruses, I believe, are being released back into the atmosphere. And eventually they're going to catch on to somebody and start spreading. And I think our scientists as well know this. As the permafrost melts, what used to be contained in those layers is coming back. And I believe that the earth always will find its balance. Now, if you're a Christian, you believe in the end times prophecies. The Hopis had theirs, excuse me. Most cultures had a time of the earth cleansing. All philosophies do. The earth will find its balance. And let's face it, man is out of balance now. We've become the virus to the earth. So the earth is starting to rise up, if you will, in many different ways, and eventually it's just going to happen. Something's going to go down, and most of you, I think, would agree that we're on the verge of economic collapse. We're in an economic war now, and the world is beginning to choose sides and separate, not come together anymore. So we've got all these things taking place all at once, and I don't believe ever before in my history of life, has this been so. Okay? We have so many things happening all at the same time. Eventually something's going to break loose, and that's why I am a prepper. Not just that, because I enjoy the lifestyle. So don't take any of this stuff too seriously. Life is one day at a time. If we live like Tecumseh said, it's okay. Live or die, it's okay. But I'm prepared like a hobbyist, if you will. I take it very seriously at certain times, but for the most part, it's just part of my life. The growing of the food, the learning to can certain things, learning to make my own power, learning to cook just from the sun. All of these things are hobbies that I just absolutely love doing. So I don't really struggle with prepping. A lot of people get overwhelmed by it. I don't. It's just another day, and it's a hobby. And I just try and learn as much as I can, and it's fun. Most of what I do for prepping is fun, but I'm also a realist. So, presenting all the things that I'm presenting to you about this stuff, that most of the population is going to get wiped out if the rule of law is lost and we have a catastrophic event such as solar flare, plague, economic collapse. And my feeling is that one of these diseases will probably get out of control and cause the economic collapse that the governments around the world that are trying to control. They'll cause it to happen. The disease will, because eventually people will begin to internalize and hide themselves away while these plagues are sweeping, and the economies will begin to just tank. And that's one scenario that could be very real. I think you could all agree. And again, it goes back, I believe that the permafrost is melting and it's releasing stuff. And I think our governments know this. That's why they're running around the world stomping these things out. And we don't even hear what's going on in China and Russia, by the way. Every once in a while we do, but not really. Okay, where a lot of permafrost is. Okay, so, but when you look at it, most scientists agree we're due for a worldwide plague. Okay, and look at what science has done. We've caused diseases to evolve. Tuberculosis, gonorrhea, syphilis, and others have now become uncurable because of the overuse of antibiotics and the lack of following through with treatments. What it did was create new strains of these things that cannot be treated. That's right, folks. Gonorrhea, there's a strain out that is no longer treatable. So, just know that. So I'm a realist. And so when I look at the end time scenario, let's not even call it end times, let's call it just SHTF, right? Okay, man is not above its carnal nature. Man will survive, okay? And it won't be pretty. And the people who take control won't be spiritualists, nice people, because there won't be a vote. It will be taken the way it's taken everywhere else, by control and authority and power. The alpha dogs will rise to power, and they will rule with an iron fist. And they will not be nice people. So, we add that into the mix, and we see another level of elimination of those who would hope for mankind to do its best, which I do too, but I'm also a realist in that I'm prepared for the fact that we may have to defend ourselves as well and take care of what we have so that we can survive. And again, live one day at a time, so it shouldn't matter anyway. But the point I'm trying to make is we have the obese, we have the people who are dependent upon drugs to survive, we have the elderly, and we have many others. And I don't mean drugs as in drug addicts, I mean medications to stay alive. When all this begins to dry up, right there is 30% of the population. Then we've got people who just won't make it because they weren't prepared anyway, so let's make it 50% is gone in 60 days, probably. Okay, that's reality. When you really think about it, for an SHTF event to happen that is nationwide, probably 50% will be gone in 60 days. So that eliminates 50% of the competition for what resources are left. And America's a big place. There's millions and millions and millions of acres, okay? So, and this person that started this dialogue could see that, what I was rationalizing. Then, take it further. Say it's a plague that's sweeping, okay? How much is the plague going to take? Then the marauders. How much are they going to take? You know what I mean? Let's just go beyond just what's going to happen naturally and add on the next level, okay? And then long-term survival. How many is that going to take? How many infections, right? Or just the flu. Many others have talked about just the flu. How many, if there's no hospitals left or none of that stuff available, how many will just get taken out by normal disease? You know what I mean? And so the reality of it is probably only 25% will survive. And I believe that's a big number. Okay, so what's left? Well, what's going to be left is those that were prepared on multiple levels, right? Discussed that before. And the marauders, the alpha dogs, that are going to take power in pockets. You know what I mean? And they will exterminate the spiritualists, the pacifists. They just will. It's the natural order of things. A herd grazes and the pack takes the weak. It's just the natural order. But on the positive note, nature will once again be able to thrive and expand back to its normal equilibrium. So I don't look at it as all negative either. I see it as a realist. Certain things just have to happen. And I know that sounds harsh and cruel maybe, but I think of it this way. If you had cancer, you would try and get it eliminated, wouldn't you? And when we think about man now, we're becoming a virus to the earth. Nature is suffering because of us, all of nature, because we're getting so populated, we're expanded out. Eventually, you think about what man is control of, just think about, though, too, what nature is capable of to take care of itself. And the earth always has. It was here, for a long time, and it's always taken care of itself. It wasn't until the last few hundred years that man's population got out of control and survival rates went up. You know what I mean? Before that, man was pretty much being taken out by natural order of things, and war and other things. And that's something that the next level that I go to, he brought up, well, people are just going to come up and take your food and your land. And I thought, oh, really? Well, they got to make it this far for one. And then the next thing is, do you really think we let people hunt our land without our permission? And you know what's funny too about places like where I am? The average 10-year-old is lethal by the age of 10. 200 yards lethal. It's just the way kids are raised. So now you add into that to the normal population of about 250,000 men. I don't think people are making it too far up here. It's not just the terrain and the climate, it's the fact that tribal warfare begins to ensue. And people will not let the balance take place. Much like Native American tribes competed and exterminated one another, people want to focus on the love, peace, and joy of Native American philosophy and not study the realities of Native American philosophy, which I have. Why? Because there's a little bit in me and I wanted to know some of my heritage. Not that I'm all Native American, I'm not. It's just I have a portion of me that is, and I have ancestry that was. So I learned. And I wanted to learn those beautiful ways, but I also learned the darkness too. As with all things, there is light and dark. With all things, there's yin and yang. It's just the natural order of things. And the fact of the matter is, if we study Native American history, this was done because during times of drought and famine, you couldn't take on tribes. Your own people would die. You know, there was only so much to go around, and this has been going on for thousands of years throughout man's history. And again, it boils down to one thing: the strong survive. You know, when I think about spiritualists and how the Dalai Lama fled into, the mountains to survive, right? The Himalayas. But even they were exterminated from time to time. You know, so while I think people live in a fantasy world that somehow something is going to be beyond human nature, it won't be. Because the spiritualists are going to be in their places, but they're certainly not going to be in control. It's going to be marauders, very dark, demented people who will take and take and take and do not care. I've been to places where people were macheted over bags of rice. Women, men, children. It did not matter. They don't care. And I think people don't understand that at times. And again, I'm just being devil's advocate, a realist, if you will, of what happens when the rule of law fails. I think people tend to overlook that. And that's why I talk about being a balanced prepper. You know, I'm happy, joyous, and free every day. I let go of this stuff. It doesn't bother me because live or die, it's just another day. You know, so whether I make it or not isn't a big deal. Prepping to me is a hobby, and I hope that all of you do that. That it's just a part of your lifestyle, a survivalist lifestyle of living off your own food, so you don't have to eat GMOs. You know what I mean? Just creating your own power so that you can be free from the power grid. You know, that's fun to do, isn't it? To learn about it and all of that, and just the savings every month. I did the math on it. It's over 30 grand over 30 years. Think about it, building a little bit with, a house with some sense, it'll actually pay for itself over 30 years in certain ways if you build it right, okay? So these are things that I love to do, and therefore prepping makes me happy. It doesn't make me think of all the negatives, but someone posed that question to me today. And the reality of it is there isn't going to be much competition. Because let's face it, for the first thing, most people aren't prepared. For the second thing, even those who are prepared, many of them will be wiped out. Why? Because certain people of darkness will take control, as it has been throughout the entire world, throughout the history of mankind. And then, at a certain point, when there is enough for what's left, there will be peace. But during that initial struggle, it's just the natural thinning of the herd, if you will. Then you got to talk about infection, basic disease that we can't stop anymore. You know, gonorrhea can't be cured anymore. There's another strain out. Syphilis, tuberculosis, all these things have come back with a vengeance because of antibiotics and are now untreatable. There are certain strains that you can't treat. And think about MRSA. We had a hospital closed here because of MRSA. Man is doing it. We are creating our own demise. I mean, and that's heavy to think about. But again, one day at a time, let it go. Just wanted to propose all these things. How many people do you think will make it past the first 6 months? Anyway, experience, strength, and hope. Jim out.